PAC as an organization, I am convinced that it has never lost direction. It sometimes becomes strong or weak, but that is not loss of direction.
After the bishops actually issued the pastoral letter, I must say here, I would like to thank them, for that, because that actually removed the fear, the people of Malawi had.
One of the tragedies of Malawi is that our budget is designed to spend more money on people who can afford. Why should we fail today? So if we did it, then we can also.
The political liberalization in Malawi was heralded by a pastoral letter issued in March 1992 by Catholic bishops that pointed out to the ills of the one-party system of government. Hence, in response to the bishop's letter and the solidarity of the Church of Central Africa Presbyterian and other religious bodies, signified by the letter of 28 August 1992 to the then President Dr. Hastings Kamuzubanda, there began in Malawi a process of political transition to multi-party democracy. His Grace, Archbishop Tarcisius Ziyaye, highlights about the pastoral letter.
They pointed out some concerns that yes, for instance, we are happy that there is a development, but we have these concerns like lack of freedom of expression and association. We have schools, but the standard of our education is going down. People feel oppressed. They cannot speak freely. And they are also always living in fear.
Nkhani ikufunika ansa imozi lero zuwa lisana loye. Mabishopu ava achita mwano wa ukulu kuziko la Malawi lino.
Chimene timadziwa kuti popanda angwazi kwadakhala kulibe chilichonse mu Malawi. Bas.
But how were pastoral letters distributed? Father Gamba explains.
As soon as the pastoral letter was printed, we had from all the 7 dioceses, priests, sisters in particularly coming from the different hospitals where they have ambulances to collect their number of copies, actually hiding them underneath medicines, bandages. That's how the pastoral letters, imagine, went from here to far north as in Mzuzu and down south in Chikwawa, and nobody was able to detect anything. It was the good sister taking care of the patients and distributing medicines, and it proved to be a good medicine after all.
And how did Channel Africa play a big role during that time? Mr. Unandi Banda explains.
It was a media strategy, and we used the whole campaign. We did the whole campaign through Channel Africa. We realized that we could not hold rallies in Malawi at that time under a banner of Malawi Democratic Party, MDP, because this country had a law that outlawed activities of all other political parties in this country.
Through this unprecedented process, an organization was established known as Public Affairs Committee, PAC.
At the convention of the Malawi Congress Party in September or October of 1992, the president, when he was closing, just like at Zomba at Parliament, where he had said the church did not come, because of he had received this mother letter which we had signed at Chilema, the president said, I invited the church to come and discuss with my ministers. Today, I am appointing a presidential committee on dialogue. Yes. You can see now, So you have PAC which has already formed here. Some people say PAC was formed by Kamuzu. No, no, no. Kamuzu did not form PAC. You know, PAC came into being, as we have said. But Kamuzu formed the Presidential Committee on Dialogue to dialogue with PAC.
The Public Affairs Committee, PAC, is a civil society interfaith organization made up of the many Protestant, Catholic, and Muslim faith groups in Malawi. It operates in areas of human rights, good governance, mediation, advocacy, HIV/AIDS, gender-based violence, religious coexistence, electoral process, peace and security. PAC is registered under Trustee Incorporation Act and composed of Episcopal Conference of Malawi, Evangelical Association of Malawi, Malawi Council of Churches, Muslim Association of Malawi, Kadria Muslim Association of Malawi. Administratively and their 34 affiliates, PAC commands respect and remains the voice of the voiceless. Its founders are stipulated in its constitution, and these are CCAP Blantyre Synod, CCAP Livingstonia Synod, CCAP General Synod, Diocese of Lake Malawi of Anglican Church, Diocese of Southern Malawi of Anglican Church, Episcopal Conference of Malawi, Malawi Law Society, Malawi Council of Churches, Muslim Association of Malawi. During its formation, it assumed various names such as Ecumenical Committee, Extraordinary Committee, Malawi National Affairs Committee, National Affairs Committee. Formed in 1992, during the Malawi's political transition from one-party to multi-party system of government, the Public Affairs Committee, PAC, remains a key civil society organization up to date. PAC is unique in many ways, and the organization was formed as a result of a popular national outcry for transformation.
The people of this country must decide on the 14th of June whether the Malawi Congress Party should continue to rule this country or you want the multi-party people to rule the country.
And indeed, the referendum came. We won. When I say won, I'm talking about the whole people, community that was agitating for the multipartyism. 63% said yes. People of Malawi wanted the multiparty.
PAC began as a broad-based movement for change from the one-party system of government to multi-party democracy between the years of 1992 to 1994. It was led by their religious community and included political pressure groups and other interested groups.
Yeah, of course, you want change.
The history of PAC in dialogue processes cannot be overemphasized. In 1992, it maintained dialogue with Dr. Banda's regime through Presidential Committee on Dialogue, PCD, which resulted in multi-party government. But how was the mood in 1992 and 1993 during the transition period from one-party system of government to multi-party system of government? Dr. Bakiri Muluzi highlights.
The mood in the period leading to 1990s was that the people of Malawi were agitating for change, political change that is. They were agitating for change because they were not happy in the way things were during that time. And therefore they were saying, what can we do to change the situation in the country? And what I would say is that there was also a outcry for political transformation. and that's why it became necessary, to go through that transition. And because there was no window through which they could express, their opinion, their frustrations, so they were looking for avenues, and therefore the pastoral letter in 1991, I think it was, 1992, came into being. But also we saw formation of a number of, activities, underground movements, notably the one which was led by the late Chakofwa Chehana, the one which was led by me and other people. But also that, became the formation of the Public Affairs Committee, which also created a window, for people to actually focus, their attention to what was happening in the country.
Once we agreed to say that there must be an election, because we from PAC wanted a straight election, not referendum. But because people like John Tembo, they did not believe that the president was not popular. They did not believe that the Malawi Communist Party was not popular. Perhaps out of their own selfishness, I don't know. So I think they must have persuaded the president to say, no, you are popular. So then the trend was turned. They said, we must test. Instead of going for elections, we must put a question to the Malawians. A referendum must be called for.
The freedom that we are enjoying today did not come from an easy background, but through the courage of our religious leaders. And what were the fruits of multi-party democracy? Reverend Kansilanga explains.
People were happy that they were in a new era, but what that meant, because I think there was a lack of civic education, people went then, they overflowed with joy, they began to be disrespectful and to rob one another, so that security was really absent. So I think this was due to lack of civic education. Because people, once they have received a new status, they should take it or receive it with a responsibility. But that spirit of responsibility was not there. So there was a lot of robbing, a lot of shooting, etc., during that period. That's the only thing that we thought was not good at all.
The benefits were that it gave freedoms of our people, to express themselves. During that time, you remember, even there was only one newspaper in this country. There was one radio station. People could not express themselves. So the benefits, you see, the human dignity in any country is paramount. So what gave the people of Malawi is that human dignity, that they were able to express themselves. They were able to, form institutions of government. We talk about the Human Rights Commission, the Anti-Corruption Bureau, all those institutions. The Public Affairs Committee, as one of them, actually became important in the history of our country, and therefore it became important as in terms of the multipartyism itself.
Following the transition period, the Public Affairs Committee, PAC, remained a faith-based organization focusing on the democratization process. In 2003, it spearheaded a campaign against open and third-term constitutional amendment. This time, those who were in government forgot the rules of the game on the political front and wanted to campaign for a leader of that time to continue his duties for their benefit. Reverend Father Sika Swaya.
It was very, very tough to come on the open air and challenge when a chair, Bakiri Blues. I went to the Bwana chair, Bakiri Blues, I said, is it true that you want to stand for another term? He openly said, it's not me, Constantine. It is the people who want me to lead them for another third term.
If you're talking about an open term, then you're actually talking about a life president. And for some of us, it led us to think of what happened in 1963, because the issue of the open term was there, and eventually what we had was a life president. The president, Dr. Banda, was declared life president in 1971 or so, 1971. And so for a government to campaign for an open term, that meant for some of us that we were going back to a life presidency.
It was not easy during this period of campaign against open and third term constitutional amendment, as some men of God had to suffer for their work towards a better Malawi. Reverend Father Sika Swaya reveals more.
That's why now it became to be very difficult. Because people, I must assure you, people took it as if it was personal. That I did not want Dr. Bakiri Mulu to become a president for the third term. But yet I was fighting to say, in the Constitution it says 2 terms only.
While this happened, PAC did not stop there. In 2007, PAC maintained dialogue with major political parties on Section 65 and budget.
The opposition was very keen on Section 65, while the government was very keen on the budget. They were very keen that the budget should pass in Parliament, and the opposition, they were saying, well, we're going to pass the budget until the issue of Section 65 is resolved. And so what we did was to, first of all, to listen to both parties.
With its extensive experience in the political processes, the organization has previously hosted COMESA on CSO's initiative, participates in COMESA observation missions, Africa-EU Joint Strategy for Development, and AU-ECOSSOC initiatives at international level. Though the civil society is being described as weak in Malawi, PAC remains an exception in its role in the democratization process. The Drivers of Change and Development ODI report 2006 described PAC as an exception. PAC believes in working through its existing network of churches and mosques in order to achieve its articulated objectives. It has over 3,500 volunteers at district and regional level. It has taken lead in national public advocacy and countrywide programs. But is PAC a voice of the voiceless? The newly elected board secretary, Father Chimombo, has this to say.
In fact, that has been the case. It is and will still be. The reason is most of the voiceless are the ones who don't have positions in society. They are the downtrodden, live in villages, and if you see the combination of the PAC membership is composed of religious bodies, and the religious bodies are spread all over the country. They are in towns, they are in villages, we suffer with them. So basically, by looking at the membership, we are there and we reach out to every individual in the country and elsewhere, because these are the people that we preach to, we talk to on everyday basis and every time that we meet as a religious congregation.
Public Affairs Committee held its first all-inclusive stakeholders conference at Limbi Catholic Cathedral Hall from 14th to 15th March 2012 under the theme, Time to Reclaim Our Destiny Seeking Redress to Political and Economic Challenges.
Reclaim does not mean remove. But it means take back that which is yours. restore that which has been lost, rearrange the deranged.
The conference was held with a background of continuous political and economic governance challenges facing Malawi at that moment. A lot of things happened prior to the conference. One challenge was the cancellation of 1 month advance booking at Mount Sochi Hotel 3 days before the conference, citing logistical challenges. The cancellation of the booking at the hotel made the Public Affairs Committee to shift the conference to Limbi Catholic Cathedral Hall. There were confusing messages, government propaganda then, in media trying to confuse people about the conference. The messages were that the conference was about taking over government or staging a coup. Despite all this, people participated in the conference. Key presentations were 3, namely the current political situation in Malawi, the economic situation in Malawi, and the constitutional gaps and opportunities in current political situation. Public Affairs Committee consulted widely on the continued political and economic governance challenges coupled with arrogance and threats on its citizenry that led to the lack of security and comfortable living standards, just to mention a few. It also drew recommendations that would allow religious leaders engage and advocate for life improvement. One of the government officials to be met regarding the outcome of this conference was the head of state. Then it was Dr. Bingu Wamtarika. Unfortunately, he died before meeting Public Affairs Committee delegation. Second All-Inclusive Conference, 30th to 31st October 2012. This conference was held from 30th to 31st October 2012 at Mount Sochi Hotel in Blantyre. The aim of the conference was to establish a common position on issues of Section 65, Section 64, tripartite elections, autonomy of parliament, a report on the review of Republican Constitution, and also economic situation following devaluation. The following were some of the observations of the conference. There was an assurance that tripartite elections would be held by the Minister of Justice, Honorable Ralph Kasambala. A resolution was to be made on tripartite elections. Public Affairs Committee, PAC, was to undertake advocacy on electoral process and to develop position papers on Section 65, Section 64 and Permanent National Planning Commission. The following were some of the outcomes of the conference. The conference generated a broad-based debate on issues surrounding Section 65, Section 64, tripartite elections, and transactional versus informative leadership. The tripartite bill passed in Parliament in November 2012. Delegates continued to debate on governance through Public Affairs Committee email list. For example, the appointment of the Vice President to oversee electoral process. They recommended that Public Affairs Committee has to re-engage the President, while others felt that Public Affairs Committee should hold another conference in the first quarter of 2013. United Nations Development Programme invited Public Affairs Committee to consider tackling national dialogue and advocate for an idea of redefining the country's vision in the first quarter of 2013. Both communiques from Limbi Cathedral Conference and Mount Sochi Hotel were submitted to the head of state and reacted to some issues raised by Public Affairs Committee. Feedback on the advocacy interface meetings following the second all-inclusive conference. Feedback on advocacy interface with Her Excellency Dr. Joyce Banda, November 2012. A number of issues were raised by the Public Affairs Committee at this interface meeting. These were Section 65, Section 64, tripartite elections, National Planning Commission and economic hardships, internal and external travelling by Her Excellency, expenditure on food distribution, and transactional leadership versus transformational leadership. The meeting went well as there was openness on both sides, thus PAC and government sides. Questions were asked from both sides for clarification. Public Affairs Committee PAC observed that there is a need to help government solve some of the problems. Proposals were made. Some of the proposals were as follows: the establishment of the National Planning Commission to work on the economic hardships the country is going through, government to push for passing of tripartite elections bills in Parliament, special review of Section 65 by Law Commission to assess if Section 64 is still important, Her Excellency to minimize on travelling, internal and external, food distribution to be done by district commissioners. It was observed that it is very expensive for the president to be distributing food. Malawi to work towards transformational leadership at all levels. Meeting with Speaker of National Assembly, Honorable Chimuntu Banda. PAC held a meeting with the Speaker of the National Assembly on 18th January 2013 at Parliament Boardroom in Lilongwe. The main aim of the meeting was to share with the Speaker what Public Affairs Committee had discussed with the Head of State in November 2012. Mainly, the discussion centered around Section 65 and Section 64 and also the autonomy of Parliament. The Speaker made his observations on these items. He indicated to have problems to implement Section 65 as people rush to courts. On autonomy of Parliament, he agreed with PAC that Parliament is not independent, that most decisions are made by the executive branch of government. He also alluded to the fact that as Parliament, they are not able to control their own budget, thereby making it difficult for Parliament to administer some of its duties. Speaker of the National Assembly also recommended the Public Affairs Committee for its advocacy work it is doing in Malawi and suggested if PAC could meet Parliamentary Task Force to further explore the problems Parliament is facing.
Just in the year 2012, UNDP described PAC as the most important social institution with capacity to strengthen social cohesion, showcasing that PAC is an interfaith grouping and that leadership is a rare race. On 22nd to 23rd May 2013, held its annual general meeting, AGM, at Mount Sochi Hotel, where new office bearers were elected. The full names of the new office bearers is as follows: Chairperson, Bishop James Tengatenga; Vice Chairperson, Reverend Dr. Chingota; Board Secretary, Father Emmanuel Chimombo; Publicity Secretary, Father Peter Mulomole; Treasurer, Sheikh Dr. Salmin Omar; Members, Bishop G.I. Matonga, Mrs. Caroline Bwanali Musa, Mrs. Yacinta Mtambo, and Mr. Chris Chisoni. PAC Board of Trustees, Episcopal Conference of Malawi, Bishop Montfort Stima; Evangelical Association of Malawi, Reverend Fletcher Kaiya; Malawi Council of Churches, Bishop Fanuel Magangani and Reverend T. Nyasuru; Muslim Association of Malawi, Sheikh Idrisa Mohammed and Mr. Twanje; Kadria Muslim Association of Malawi, Brother Osman Karim. But what is the importance of this AGM ahead of 2014 tripartite elections? Acting chairperson for the AGM, Sheikh Mohammed, explains.
First importance of this AGM is that we are going to institute the new executive board as well as the new members of the trustees. And secondly, also to remind ourselves, especially the faith-based community, of our role when we approach the electoral period that is coming. And also to explain as well as to sensitize the members on the plans that the PAC has prepared ahead of the 2014 elections.
As we know that Malawians, we have those people who can't come up and speak, and PAC, as you know, it's the voice of the voiceless. So as we are heading to the 2014 elections, we can sensitize Malawian citizens that they will be able to know what will be, what they will be doing during the 2014 elections.
The AGM had a presentation from law expert Dr. Kanyongolo and an economist, Professor Chikawonda. On the Malawi's economic front, Professor Chikawonda says,
one of the tragedies of Malawi is that our budget is designed to spend more money on people who can afford. You look at the student population in the University of Malawi. Look at the schools where they've come from. 90% will be from schools that will pay no less than 50,000, 60,000 kwacha per term. Some were even paying 600,000 kwacha per term. So when that kid goes to the University of Malawi, the government will say, no, you can't afford. You can only afford 50,000 per year. That's what our government will say. Now, I'm wondering whether that makes sense.
This AGM meeting and conferences held meet some of the objectives from PAC Constitution, which are to encourage religious bodies to fulfill their prophetic and religious roles and respond to the socio-economic and political affairs of the Republic of Malawi, to promote peace, rule of law, human rights and tranquility in the Republic of Malawi. PAC has numerous achievements under its existence, some being participating in the 1994, 1999, 2004, and 2009 general elections. Advocacy on third-term constitutional bid 2002 to 2003. Public interest litigation on amendment to Section 65, 2001 to 2002. Local government elections, EU Brussels, 2000. Production and distribution of the Constitution of the Republic of Malawi. Involved in dialogue process between CSOs and Presidential Committee on Dialogue Committee in 2012. Appearing before Commission of Inquiry on the death of Bingu Wamutarika, 2012. Establishing NICE program under its banner, then known as PAC/NICE program with support from EU in 1999. PAC is therefore a platform for collective religious leadership of the country to meet, discuss, and pronounce on important national issues. When they speak and act in unison, they have proved to be a powerful moral voice that politicians could not disregard.
PAC cannot fail to change the political and economic landscape. If we were able to change the political system 20 years ago, why should we fail today? So if we did it, then we can also.
With support from Irish Aid, in 2005, PAC was asked to commission a consultancy to establish the mandate of the organization. A firm from Netherlands conducted the survey, and the report concluded that the mandate of PAC is to act as the voice of the voiceless.
Most of the members of the Public Affairs Committee are church leaders. And these people are always in constant touch with ordinary people in the villages or in the urban centers. And so, because they are closer to the people, therefore they understand the aspirations of the people themselves. They understand their frustrations. They understand what they are going through.
As a voice of the voiceless, PAC will be sourcing extra funds for advocacy work. PAC thanks Tilitose Fund for funding the second all-inclusive conference, AGM meeting, and other activities that have benefited Malawians.
More importantly, I wish to thank Tilitose Fund for financially supporting this event.
Today, 14th June, is an important day for PAC, as it is a day that opened multi-party democracy in Malawi. But the question is, should Malawians celebrate this day, and why?
Just like we celebrated on the 6th of July in 1964, it was democracy, which was moving Malawi from colonial rule to the local rule, African rule. And then the local rule happened to have been, you might say, almost the same as in the past. Yeah, because people had not been really politically been freed. We were living under a police state.
You see, 1964, when Malawi became independent, was a turning point in the history of our country. It was a turning point. So equally, when people voted for referendum in 1993, on 14th of June, that was another turning point. Now we recall that on the 6th of July, we do celebrate, our independence. The question I always ask, why should we not celebrate when that turning point, came in 1993, when the people of this country voted for multipartyism, voted for the freedom, the human dignity. So we should celebrate. And if you recall, during our government, the UDF government, did declare the 14th of June as a public holiday. Unfortunately, I'm saying unfortunately because I didn't understand why the previous government, the Bingu administration, actually removed that. But I think it's something that we ought to celebrate because it was a turning point in the history of this country.
For it to reach this advanced stage after 20 years, the following development partners have made a tremendous contribution to the organization.
Dan Church Aid, Irish Aid, ICCO, Christian Aid, OSISA, National Democratic Institute, Norwegian Church Aid, Danida, USAID, DFID, British High Commission, GTZ, UNDP, NOLAD, and European Union EU.
After all is said and done, PAC remains relevant in Malawi's political and economic landscape. It is a voice of the voiceless. Therefore, celebrating our 20 years of multi-party democracy is an important issue.